One. Boom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We're going to have a conversation that explores the intersection of diversity, analytics, and leadership and discover how these elements are shaping the future of organizations and individuals. So we got an exciting one for you. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros.
Business Bros. Our guest is an accomplished consultant with a wealth of experience in areas like diversity, equity, and inclusion, people analytics, and product management. In this conversation, we're going to explore her impressive journey, her contributions to fostering diversity, her groundbreaking work in AI, her dedication to empowering the next generation of business leaders, and her expertise in diversity, equity, inclusion, and the people analytics in both timely and crucial. So stay tuned for a conversation that's sure to inspire, educate, and shed light on the vital topics of diversity and analytics. Let's welcome to the show, Miss Miranda McKie. Miranda, the party has begun. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
First of all, I always like to start off every conversation with the probably the most obvious question, which is, what is it that you do for a living? You're here to promote something, talk about something that you do really well, that you're selling, that you're promoting. So what is that for you?
Yeah, great question. So I work I'm a consultant and I work in diversity, equity, and inclusion and HR, analytics, and strategy. And we work with clients all around the world, actually, really helping them achieve some of their strategic priorities by leveraging diversity, equity, and inclusion and HR. We find organizations that really invest in their people do better. They're able to access more markets. They're able to increase their revenue growth and innovate. And that's really what we do. We help clients kind of achieve their goals. Your audio cut out for me.
Sorry, how about there? That's
Great.
better.
There we go. Yeah.
So diversity literally means a lot of different things. So I'm kind of gonna narrow this down a little bit. And tell me about that ideal client that you're looking for. What kind of diversity are you looking for? Is it in employment? Is it in clients? Is it in the inside staff in a particular industry? Who's that target audience that you're after?
Yeah, we typically work with anywhere from small to large organizations, and we love to work with organizations that actually have access to a lot of data. We believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion shouldn't just be something that's based on gut feel, but instead be backed by evidence and facts. So we typically work with organizations that have access to a bunch of data about their people in order to make those strategic decisions. And over the years, we've worked with organizations, again, all over the world. So from mining industries to consumer goods, to financial institutions, to tech organizations, you name it, we've been partners with them and worked with them.
Data is probably one of the most important things and one of the most valuable things that almost any company can have nowadays. And when entrepreneurs get started, they don't always do a good job of collecting the data that they could possibly use later down the road. I know from personal experience, it was like name, phone number, and hopefully an address because you were going to send a bill or something. And that was like the only data points we were collecting. As you work with entrepreneurs in this space, as you became an entrepreneur yourself, what was that journey like, and why go the data route? Why go into that specific space?
Yeah, great question. So, so prior to running my own consulting firm, I actually worked in management consulting for one of the big ones, let's just say. And my background is actually in data architecture and engineering. And I was always really shocked when we would work with some of our clients at this other firm in the HR space, where a lot of things were just kind of based on gut feel. So you would go in, they would have, questions about, how do I support my workforce? How do I make sure that they're productive? And everything would honestly just be based off of gut feel. I was like, well, I think this person wants this. I think this person needs this. I'm going to pull on maybe my lived experience and assume that someone else also feels this way. And being a data person, I thought this was crazy. I always give the example. Imagine if you went to a CEO of an organization and said, you know what, I think you should maybe acquire this company. And they were like, why? And you're like, I don't know. It feels good. I think it's a good idea. Like that's crazy, but that's what we do in the diversity, equity, and inclusion and HR space. So really where I saw that opportunity was how do we bring data and fact-based decisions into that? So we're not just relying on this, kind of gut feel approach, but instead really looking at what is the data telling us and how do we drive strategic business decisions based on that, just like we would do with any other business domain.
How are you setting that up? I mean, you work with some companies where they had that gut feel. How do you go in and actually get them to collect real life data where they can actually look at it and say, okay, it's not a gut feeling anymore. This is what the market is telling me. This is what my customers are telling me. This is what my employees are telling me. Like, what systems or processes are you kind of implementing to gather the data?
Yeah, great question. So there is a ton of data and ton of systems within the HR space. And one way you can look at it, and if you're not an HR professional, you probably wouldn't know this, but we track data across what we call the employee life cycle. So that's everything from retention all the way to offboarding. So if someone was fired. So you have systems that we would call applicant tracking systems. You have human resource information systems. You have learning management systems. You have performance management systems. So there's actually a ton of data in this space, but a lot of organizations aren't leveraging it correctly. And then on the flip side, you also have the ability to conduct surveys and sentiment surveys of different demographics to understand their experience. And the power with this is when you bring all of that information together, and now you can start making very strategic business decisions. So to give an example, maybe I want to understand if I'm recruiting someone through this recruitment pipeline, if they're more likely to be a top performer. And I'm going to pull on my historical data to be able to say, everyone that I recruited from this pipeline has actually turned out to be a top performer. Or maybe I want to understand, people that are being recruited from this pipeline, maybe don't, take professional development courses as much of others. Maybe I want to understand, does this specific race or ethnicity get promoted at the same rates as another? So that's kind of what you do when you can start to bring all of that data together. And that's how we help our clients.
Let me ask you about the education standpoint. I feel like we're having a big shift in where when I grew up, it was go to school, go to college, get a degree, find that job. But today, I feel like more and more entrepreneurs, more and more employers are weighing that degree less and less and looking for specific things that can help their company move forward, certifications, experiences, things like that. What was your educational journey like, and what are you seeing in the marketplace today for young people coming into the market that they should expect as far as gaining certifications or getting educations?
Yeah, great question. I would say if anyone is in, probably high school or elementary school now, the jobs that will be available to you when you graduate from, college or university are going to be completely different, just with how fast the environment's moving and technology, et cetera. Personally, I studied actually in school political science. I did political science and psychology. And then when I came out into the job market, I ended up getting a job in banking, working in data governance. Yes, it sounds as boring as it was, very boring job. But that actually got me interested into learning more about data. And I was completely self-taught. I, took, external courses. I used YouTube. I used any online course that I could do to teach myself how to code, to teach myself very complex kind of data architecture and engineering practices. And by doing that, I was actually able to then, move into those specific roles as a developer. I then again consulted in data architecture and engineering, and then started my career. So with all that being said, I think one of the biggest things or the skills or that I see is really powerful is your ability to have initiative and grit. If you're able to kind of apply those things, in my personal view, I think you can learn a lot on your own. And, that weight of having to go to school to study something very specific and then do that for the rest of your life isn't really what we're seeing in the market. And I say that as someone who actually lectures at Canadian universities in people analytics. A lot of people in my courses are coming from different, career paths entirely and looking for a change, and they chose to go the educational route to do that, which is great. But I think there's so much online and resources available to everyone now that you really have much more flexibility to kind of carve your own career path.
And if I got a bunch of 17-year-old kids in the classroom, if you were going to give them advice of getting started like today, I love how you you went the traditional route. You got your degree, but then kind of life took you on a different path through experience. So if you were giving advice to these young kids graduating today and they don't have a clue, because I don't know if you remember being 17, but you usually don't exactly know what you want to do right after you graduate high school, what advice would you give them?
Oh, great question. I would say, a couple of things. Follow if you're following an educational path, follow one that allows you to think critically and will challenge the way that you think. I find a lot of programs today, it's just kind of like this textbook learning. Everyone learns the same thing. If you were going into an educational program or following a different route, see where you can kind of challenge that perspective, where it's not just, the norm of what everyone else is being taught. I also would say if anyone's looking to be an entrepreneur, start now. There's no reason you can't get your banking set up and start building your credit for your own business. I highly recommend those things because it's very, very difficult when you're older and you try to do that without the years of, kind of banking and kind of access to capital and things becomes a lot easier when you do that in your younger years.
Yeah, get those accounts seasoned and rolling. I mean, the credit history is nice when you have years in business, even if it's not super productive business, but it's slowly growing. Looks a lot better than a brand new business just getting started. You're 100% correct. And even if you get started today and you don't know everything, you're going to make mistakes. Even if you thought you knew everything and you had a great plan, what were some of the biggest mistakes that you made in business, and what were the lessons that you learned from those mistakes?
Yeah, great question. So I'd say one of the I think every entrepreneur does this. It's trying to do everything yourself and not kind of internalizing and reflecting on what am I not good at and what should I hire someone else to do because they're going to be better and more efficient than I'll be. And also just being in the consulting space, a lot of times people hire you, right? They want to work with you. They want to work with the person that's the face of the business, and really kind of working to, highlight your team more so that again, you can support more of that delegation so that not everything relies on you. I find one of the surprising things about running a business is all of the administrative stuff that you need to do, everything from your, invoices to banking to running your payroll to your marketing, et cetera. So it's very important to kind of understand those capabilities earlier on and then delegate those out to be more efficient so you can spend more time doing the strategy and strategic part of growing the business.
Yeah, it can be a little costly, especially when you're early on trying to bootstrap some of these things, but it's going to save you so much time down the road, which is why you kind of got into business in the first place, right? You wanted the time freedom, you wanted the financial freedom, and too many entrepreneurs lock themselves in being busy and not really dollar productive with a lot of those mundane tasks. And I don't know about you, but I've had that feeling before where you spend the whole day doing stuff, and then at the end of the day, you're like, nothing got done. And it's probably because you're doing exactly that mistake you described. You're handling everything instead of learning how to delegate some of these things to other people. You've been in business for quite some time now. Data is just becoming more and more valuable over time. Do you have any client stories where you were able to kind of get them from a gut feeling to now having actual data in place that made a significant difference in their business?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, a couple. We were working actually with one client. They were a professional services organization, and they struggled with understanding kind of challenges with promotions. So they, kind of had a feeling that promotions weren't being equitable. within their organization. And we were able to leverage their data to actually identify that certain demographic groups weren't actually being promoted at the same rates of other demographic groups, which was not based on merit. A lot of it was just based on bias, unfortunately, within those organizations. And we were able to dive into the actual data points of that and see tenure across specific times, look at their performance management data and understand that these ones are getting the same evaluations, yet they're not moving, they're not being promoted, and they're being stuck in middle management. And because we were able to, again, leverage that data, now when you go talk to someone about it, you can't argue with facts. This is actually happening. It's not just employees complaining anymore. It's not just, a few bad apples. It's an institutional, like, systemic issue and barrier within the organization. And then we were able to take that data and then build in comprehensive recommendations and even, associated roadmaps so that they could correct that throughout their entire organization.
And that makes a huge difference, not just for the individuals who are getting those promotions that they were long due, but the entire culture of that particular company changes, and you see the productivity go up when your company and your team feels like they've been heard, feels like their needs are met, because then they want to come to work and actually do the work that they're hired here to do. I think it's an overall benefit to the company when you're able to kind of show the data points, prove that there's some sort of bias or inefficiency there, and then strategically kind of work towards fixing those things. The company is for the better because of it. What do you feel, since you've gone and done your own agency? I'm sure the reason why people work with you is something very specific, because you have competitors left and right, I'm sure, but there's a reason why they pick you. What do you feel that is? What do you feel is the thing that your company or you do best?
Oh, great question. Consulting is very much relationship based, right? It's about going in and building relationships with your clients and making them feel that they have that white glove service and support. I think a lot of the larger firms lose that. As a boutique consulting firm, we're really able to kind of, go in and really support and understand those use cases of our clients, and they're not just like another client in our roster that we're going to leave after the project ends, but we work with them over long-term implementations. So a lot of our clients we've been working with for over 3, 4, 5 years, et cetera, because of that trust that we've been able to build.
What about improvements? Because I feel like what happens with almost any company is they have one goal, they're good at one thing, they get really good and efficient at it, which is why they're successful in the first place. And then they go into something else, right? Whether it might be a new product or service line, or it could be improving efficiencies in their own business, creating standard operating procedures, whatever it is, scaling. What do you feel that you're doing right now in your company to kind of improve, to make it better for either the clients or your internally for your company?
Oh, yeah, great question. So one of our big goals is to actually see how we can start to productize a lot of our service lines. So again, consulting is service based, so everything is, kind of based on client needs, et cetera. But in order to kind of scale and introduce more products, we're looking at how can we actually maybe automate part of this analysis, or how can we create operational efficiencies so that we can serve our clients better and faster. That's one of our kind of key goals, and as we've been growing, we've been focusing on that. So bringing in a lot of those kind of tech and data capabilities internally in our internal operations so that we can offer better services to our clients.
Let me ask you about AI, because I feel like that's one of those things, especially in such a data-driven world that we're in. Sometimes those AI, those large language models, are pulling in so much data and giving us so much useful information with, like, not even thinking about it. I was talking about this earlier today, and I was like, when I was growing up, if I wanted to know something, it was either in an encyclopedia and I happened to have it handy and there was the answer, or I didn't know it. But today, with a simple Google search, or I ask ChatGPT a question, I feed it with plugins, I get so much valuable information when I have that kind of data at my hands. And now with what you guys are doing for companies, giving them the capability of collecting data points, how is AI kind of helping, enhancing, or are you threatened by it as it emerges here now? It's not even the future, today.
Oh, yeah. I love AI. I think AI is absolutely amazing, and it's, where everything is going. And it has been, for the past, even before ChatGPT launched, so many organizations were moving to building their own unsupervised machine learning models and, leveraging AI to drive everything across so many different business domains. I find within the HR space, it's now starting to get even more popular, but with that becomes a lot of risk as well. So there's a couple of things with AI. Again, I think AI is great. But you need to still, kind of build in proper practices and policies and consider ethics around that space. And just to highlight that as an example, there was a financial services organization in the US that looked at leveraging AI, unsupervised machine learning models to essentially give out mortgages. Okay, so then instead of having someone manually having to review and look at a mortgage, they looked at how can we leverage AI to do this. So what do you think happened? Obviously, there was different demographic groups that just couldn't get a mortgage. Why is that? Because they were using a historical data to build their model. Developers aren't ethics professionals. They're not, right? They're not HR professionals. They're not DEI professionals. So when we're building and bringing in these models, we need to have that lens, because all AI is a training model. It's based off of what we teach it and what input we give it. So if we're not applying that lens, then we have a really, really challenging issue where we're applying these kind of, to go back to that mortgage example, all of these different demographics are unable to, get accepted for a mortgage. And that's happening at scale. It's no longer that there's one bad apple that's creating the problem. This is now systemic and institutionalized across so many organizations. So that's why you're seeing a lot of pushback with AI, because we're moving so fast in that direction, but regulation isn't keeping up as fast. So it's, how do we make sure that we're building these models at scale with that level of ethics in place?
I didn't even think about that, because you're right. It is collecting data. It is using historical data to analyze and give its own justification for the answers that it's giving. And if that data was biased, even if it was unintentional, the output is going to be unintentionally biased as well. I didn't even think about it that way. But you're right. I mean, it depends on the use case, obviously, but still, to be able to put on that lens and kind of understand where it's coming from. This is why people who read analytics and data are so vitally important, because you're crunching the data a lot faster, but crunching it through what lens exactly? Like
Exactly.
that makes a big difference. You're the captain of the ship. You're the CEO. You're the one who's telling where this company is going to go, guiding the vision. Where do you see this company going in the next few years? I see you're excited about AI and its use cases. I think there's a lot of opportunities that are open for you based on how you described what you do for companies and how you're using it. So where do you see your company going in the next couple of years?
Yeah, great question. So we want to obviously continue to grow. And we also want to expand our service delivery lines too. Again, as I mentioned, productizing parts of our business, leveraging more data in really interesting and innovative ways for clients. And we're also actually looking at expanding as well into the ESG space, around kind of climate and sustainability pieces as well. So that's kind of how we see our kind of growth trajectory.
ESP, that's kind of interesting. That's environmental protection services, right? Just
Sorry, ESG, environmental, social, and governance.
okay. So
Yeah, yeah.
that, I mean, that's definitely interesting that you're going into that space. I mean, uh, just to be able to kind of analyze data and see where things are going. I mean, I don't know exactly what space you're going to go into there as far as the environmental is concerned, but I'm just thinking the effects. We just had Acapulco basically get hit by like a surprise hurricane, apparently, from what I'm reading. I'm sure it has effects from things that we don't even know are even causing things like that to happen. So to be able to go into a space using the skill set that you have, I think that's pretty exciting. If people want to reach out to you, they want to find out more about what it is you do, get more information on maybe developing some data for their companies, how can they do that?
Yeah, for sure. You can reach out directly to me at Miranda McKie at McKieConsultants.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can go to our website as well at McKieConsultants.com. You're
Coming on
on
the
mute
I
again.
want to say
There we
thank
go.
you very much for coming on the program today, and taking the time out of your schedule to come on. It's definitely something that I think everybody needs to understand. And I get it. It's not the most exciting thing in the world to talk about data, but it can have so many exciting effects if you learn to utilize it correctly. So thank you for coming on and sharing what it is that you do. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this one. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. And we're out.
Thanks for having me.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.com